Schönen guten Abend, alle guten. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellencies, dear friends and colleagues of Luxembourg School of Religion and Society, the members of the Curatorium of the European Society of Catholic Theology, ladies and gentlemen, dearest Maxim, welcome. My name is Jean Red. I'm the director of the Luxembourg School of Religion and Society. It's my pleasure to welcome you all, and I would like to welcome especially the Curatorium of the European Society of Catholic Theology for its annual meeting here at the LSRS, and especially I welcome our president, Professor Dr. Margit Eckholt. Margit, dear colleagues, very much welcome in Luxembourg. Welcome. It is a very special event to which I welcome you tonight. This is not the official opening of the chapel of the Centre Jean 23 with the paintings of Maxim Kantor. We will organize an international conference and different other events in the fall. Please register already now for the LSRS newsletter to be always up to date. Tonight, we present the work of 2 years of our artist in residence, Maxim Kantor, to the public. This is the first time that these paintings are shown to the public.
Die hat noch nie jemand, die habe ich auch noch nicht gesehen.
And we have and to listen to his conference. The chapel of the Centre Jean 23 now welcomes 14 paintings that have been created between autumn 2019 and autumn 2021. This is not a commission for the chapel. This is something we could have done. There is a great artist who has been painting for the Vatican, for the Cathedral of Brussels, for the Church Saint-Mary, and for many other institutions. It is not a commission. It is the work that Maxim Kantor realized as the artist in residence of the Luxembourg School of Religion and Society. Let me say a few words to explain how it comes that such an internationally renowned artist as Maxim Kantor ends up at the LSRS. If I sum it up, I can say we met, we became friends, but this is still not enough. In 2019, the National Museum of History and Art bought a very important painting of Maxim Kantor, The Last Judgment. As soon as I heard about this, the LSRS organized together with the University of Luxembourg and the National Museum an international conference. We presented The Last Judgment in the oldest church in the city of Luxembourg, St. Michael's Church. Those who attended and Kantor himself enjoyed the event very much. The idea to develop our collaboration and to move on for new endeavors was born. And I don't even know when I asked him. I think it was just before we went for lunch. And I said, Maxim, I have a strange idea. Wouldn't you accept to become the artist in residence of the LSRS? And he looks at me, my dearest Jean, yes. And then we went for lunch. That was an immense expression of confidence. It was a tremendous encouragement also for our institution. And it was, it is, and it will be a challenge. Kantor was left completely free what his contribution to the life of the LSRS would be. What happened And what we are discovering today, this immense work, the beauty of the 7 biblical scenes and their predellas, has had a special moment in his life. How came it that we have these 14 paintings? My plan at one moment was to show a portrait Maxim Kantor painted of St. Thomas Aquinas, again in St. Michael's Church. This church was the former church of the Dominicans. And it would have been great to invite then 2 or 3 internationally renowned scholars to speak about the relevance of Thomas and his work for the present times, and to bring that together with the expression of the artist. However, Kantor didn't want to show that portrait. No, Jean. Instead, he offered to paint another picture for that church. My dear friend Guy de Muser knows how difficult it is, or how difficult it would have been to obtain the necessary authorizations to put anything up in that church. And I didn't want to wait several years to say, yes, Maxim, now we will accept your offer. But I wanted to respond as quickly as possible. He wanted to work in a chapel. Where could I bring him? I am the director of the Centre Jean 23. The Centre Jean 23 has a chapel. The authorizations for working in the chapel can be given by the director. What would you do? So I brought him here. We arrived in this space, and Maxim was immediately amazed by the setting, because now it's evening. I invite you all to come again during the day. And then you have a space that is, through this wall of glass, open to nature. He was amazed by the communication between nature and culture, nature and grace, a both open and protected space. And he walked around, and immediately there was something creative that started happening. From there we started. At the beginning, he planned on painting a central altarpiece with 2 wings. And this altarpiece should have been a very classical topic. But then the pandemic arrived. Difficult times started, and the project took a completely new turn. A transformation of the topics of the different paintings, but also of his painting techniques and of the person, happened through the exercise of painting these pictures. Maxim Kantor will speak about painting as a spiritual path in his conference tonight, if he has not decided to tell us something different. He's an artist. I would like now to do 2 things. First, I want to express my deepest gratitude and friendship to the man who introduced me to Maxim Kantor. Then I want to give voice to the former director of one of our main partner institutions, the Department of Excellency of Philosophy and Education Sciences of the University of Turin, Professor Gianluca Quozzo. So first, let me now give thanks to a man to whom I will always be indebted. It is His Excellency Ambassador Guy de Muser, Honorary Marshal of the Court. Dearest Guy, it was you who invited me to the exhibition of Maxim in the Simoncini Gallery. And so you created the friendship with Maxim and also with André and Ingrid. It was you who told Maxim that it would be good that we get to know each other more. You opened the door. You brought to life the friendship. You are at the beginning of a wonderful friendship, spiritual companionship, and an aesthetical, theological, and national project that goes far beyond everything that I could ever have hoped for, and I can say it, Maxim, that we even planned ever for. My dearest Guy, tonight I want to express to you my deepest gratitude and my admiration. And this is, of course, not all. The rest, cor ad cor loquitur. You know what I mean, but I want you to know how a great man you are. Thank you. And I want everyone to give thank you to Guido. Projects, and I learned that are much more than reason. Projects come from the heart, projects that go far, live from an inner energy, and not only from calculation and anything else. And you are still able to give birth to such ideas. Thank you. Let me now read the letter Professor Quatzer wrote for this occasion. In this letter, he offers a first impression of Kantor's work, and then also makes an important announcement that I am very honored and proud to make known tonight. Dear Director, Professor Ehret, esteemed authorities, dear friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is to my great regret that I am not able to be with you today in person for such an important event as the unveiling of Maxim Kantor's painting for the chapel of the Centre Jean 23, the opus magnum of one of the most prominent artists of our time. The painting focuses on the resurrection, which the artist sets in the urban outskirts of a contemporary town, among fragments of classical civilizations that emerge under our very eyes, just like the sculptures of antiquity used to surface from a thin mound of earth in the orchards and pastures of Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo's 15th century Rome. A caduceus held by a severed hand, a foot wearing Hermes's winged sandals, Greek columns at the feet of the Golgotha with the three crosses, a grave that reminds of an Assyrian-Babylonian tombstone, between cries of terror and a seraphic child playing with a robin. Yeah, it is a symbol of Christian piety. What frightens the most are those who are looking for the deceased's body in an empty tomb, an absence that consumes the soul, causing it to sink into an abyss of incredulity and terror of death. That, at first glance, is nothing but the end. These days, we are experiencing dramatic silences, void of salvific gestures that might soothe the screams of those in pain or in fear of an uncertain future. I am thinking of the populations threatened by the horrors of war, of human and animal life, which is being endangered by the exploitation of the environment, of the silent breathing of the forests, which are dying out, choked by human greed that knows no limits. To go back to reflecting on the resurrection in art and philosophy means questioning our false certainties. A reference to the docta ignorantia, on which, as Nicholas of Cusa believed, one can build a faith capable of acknowledging the point where our ratio discernens fails. But this is only one of the merits I ascribe to Kantor, an author who, following the Flemish master's lesson, is able to bring the sacred in everyday situations, with extraordinary effects that newly enchant nature and the world. And it is precisely for this reason that With the extraordinary support of my distinguished colleague and dear friend Jean Ayrault, I propose Kantor, Maxim Kantor, for an honorary degree in philosophy from the University of Turin. I am happy to inform you all that the Italian ministry has recently approved the initiative, which will be made official during an academic ceremony in Turin, with a lectio magistralis, presumably by next summer. I believe that this event will be an instance of resurrection for the European universitas, so much in the disheartening poverty of the current cultural panorama. Congratulations, Dr. Honoris Causa in Spe Maxim Kantor. I spoke about Guy de Musa. I read the text from Gianluca Quazzo. I didn't make any introduction to Maxim Kantor by telling you that he's coming from Russia, that he has ancestors coming from Argentina, that there is the Jewish heritage in it, that there is the Christian heritage in it, that there is the study of nature in his soul, and that he was also an artist who was always opposing power. And political criticism was part of his art. But as he said, he has never been a political artist. I didn't tell you all that, because you can read it also on Wikipedia and other places. For Maxim Kantor, there is one thing that is highly important. And this is human relationships. And in all his paintings, you will also always find families. And if he has anything that art should contribute to, he says in one text he wrote, it is that we can build rather community relationships with love. And this is the contribution that he wants to make. And here is Maxim. This is not written on this page, but I can't just not say a word, as I said also, to Guy. And I don't apologize for being also personal in this introduction, because all this art is about personal living relationships. If art doesn't contribute in the eyes of Maxim to bringing alive new relationships between people, between persons, between countries, then it's of no use. And if it doesn't bring new relationships between God and people also to life, then this is not a spiritual art. I must thank you simply for the love and friendship. And you said we did it, and I said we are doing it, and this project is ongoing, because it's the quest. It's the quest of God and of humanity and of their mutual relationship. And it's the quest in which not only the brain, but the heart and everything that makes a human person is taking its full signification and full part in it. Maxim, thank you. What shall I say others? I will now hand over the floor to you. It's my privilege now to hand the floor over to the designated Dr. Honoris Causa Maxim Kantor. At the LSRS, we welcome him as our colleague. It's good that one has sometimes written text that keeps the emotions under control. And we thank him for his outstanding work. It is once again a gift, an encouragement, and a challenge, because we have to live up to it. Maxim, the floor is yours. We are here with open hearts and minds. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for everything.
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited that my lecture probably is going to be not very academic and far from your expectations. It's not a conference, it's not even a lecture, just expression of deep gratitude to you all who are here and to whom I did paint all this. If I may add something to these 14 pictures, it never can be enough comparing to what I felt during 2 years in which I did paint those pictures. But before I start to maybe to explain some details here in these panels, I wish to say words of deepest gratitude to Jean Herré, who simply inspired me for this work. This work, in many aspects, if I may use this word, is a monument of friendship, of instant but very deep friendship, which now has already a long and special story. It blossomed at once, but then within years of this work, it improved and improved. I do not exaggerate if I say that we shared 2 letters a day, which is quite unusual for me and probably even for Jean, who used to write letters, but probably not that many a day. I had a feeling I need to share thoughts, especially because my thoughts were moving fastly. I started with a very traditional altarpiece. It is not the first time I am working for church. Since I consider myself as a Christian artist, it was my approach and a goal to work for Christian temple. And I was honored to work for Vatican and to certain cathedrals. And even when I made big panels for Oxford, I used to turn them in a way that it became a biblical sujet. And in most of my pictures, there is a hidden, or not even hidden, approach to biblical scenery, and the plot, even if this plot is connected sometimes with politics or daily life, I tried to turn it in a way that one could see connection with sacred symbols. So it's not the first time I'm working for Christian temple, but it is the first time when I felt such responsibility. Jean simply left me alone here with certain agreement that never was pronounced actually, but it was very clear that he gave me his trust. And I felt responsibility also towards his trust and his belief in my capacities. So I start like I normally used to do with classical subjects, and my idea was to create certain altarpiece with all expression which I thought which I may bring to picture. And it was the first idea was to paint very classical sujet tombing of Jesus. I worked on this piece for about 2-3 months. It was not that bad. It was okay. But then I had a feeling that I repeat something that I saw already or I was told about. Nothing wrong was there. And I even brought some expressions to faces. And even it was my brushwork, my usual brushwork, which sometimes is not that bad. But it wasn't exactly what I felt at this moment. And at that moment, I felt lonely. I felt scared. I felt isolated, losing hope, due to many reasons, personal reasons, all this virus problems, certain intellectual researches. And by the way, I am living on the island, which also creates a kind of isolation. So when I did St. John on Patmos, well, Ile de Ré is not exactly Patmos, but it's also an island. Seascapes which are depicted here are exactly from the nature with which I'm surrounded day by day. So looking at the tombing of Jesus, which I made, it was already on the way, and it was not that bad, as I say. I said, no, it's not me. It's not exactly what I feel. And I remember we discussed it with Jean, I discussed it with my wife, with my children, even my younger children are very young. I have elder son and I have 2 little boys. And I said, what really moves you when you are thinking of being Christian? What really makes you excited? What really gives you strength? And we came to conclusion that this special strength coming from the feeling of lost, of loneliness, from the moment when all is gone and there is almost no hope and no ground on which you may stay. And you bear, like Hiob did, or like Jonas did, or like Moses did, you bear this situation and start to construct brick by brick, step by step, to build up your faith almost from nothing, having only Him above, only Word inside yourself, and only will to follow this Word. But there is no support. So I choose for the center of composition because it already became clear that we're speaking not only about one piece, but about retable, which is always a kind of novel, a kind of huge story where you go from sujet to another sujet, from page, from chapter to another chapter. And the center of this story became the moment of great hesitation and surprise when 3 Marias came to tomb and found tomb empty. It is a kind of challenge to put this subject in front of audience, in the center of altarpiece. The emptiness in the very center, which is a kind of challenge or even a joke or provocation. You all know this episode when 3 Maries, or 3, we call them sometimes holy mirth-bearing women, they're coming to tombs, and angel shows them they should look somewhere else for Jesus. Angel here is a boy, he has features of my Peter. And bird, which is on his hand, it's not a robin, by the way, as Gianluca did. It's goldfinch, in Italian cardellino. Goldfinch, bird which came to torn crown of the Jesus on the cross, helping Jesus taking needles out of his head. Therefore, goldfinch was wounded itself, and the head of bird became red. So this goldfinch here is the only red spot on the green picture, and this red is Jesus' blood, obviously, and also the symbol of faith. So angel keeps faith in his hand, on his hand. Also, the ruins around this ancient ruins tell, in my opinion, tell something also important. This tomb with relief that starts from Babylon times through Roman to nowadays, showing all different masks of power. This is one side. And another side is broken statue of Mercuritar Maximus, Hermes Trismegistus, who, if we recall, Marsilio Ficino was one of those who invented and somehow predicted the appearance of Jesus, and who lived in the time of Moses as well. So the broken Hermes Trismegistus and this tomb of power and Roman column, plus the modern landscape with modern housing over there, it gives us like variety of time through Babylon period to Roman, and by the way, Tiberius is over there. And altogether is like a ruins of history, which leaves us with emptiness of this tomb. And sometimes this hesitation or even fear, which we feel observing history nowadays, for instance, it can be only encouraged by faith, by this little goldfinch on the hand of a boy. Coming into these ruins, I encouraged myself to depict also some broken Greek vases, on which, red figured vases, on which I paint story of Jesus. He comes to Jerusalem, carrying cross, tombing. Here is tombing. Sujet of tombing remains here. I started with this picture, but I put it somewhere in the angle. And even on the base in which probably Marie brought mirth, there is a sujet of Annunciation. So altogether, that's what I tried to do, combines several periods of history, like put all times together to introduce to us very simple idea: through all time, this belief and trust may grow up, giving us hope, even in very awful and hopeless situation. So that was the first step to start Retable. Then I thought about scenario, how to develop it, and which points from biblical story to take to improve that, and what can be compared with this very moment, very special moment of strange surprise when one lost hope, completely lost hope, and then little sign of hope appears, little light of hope appears again. And I choose John, who writes Apocalypse, and angel draws for him, little boy draws for him some images from coming apocalypse. Needless to say that both of them are portraits of my children. This is Peter, big one is George, and very little one is Thomas. Both of them found the places here. And certainly Jewish cemetery, since what image of death could John imagine at that moment? Only Jewish cemetery. So I put this cemetery, and instead of Saint Michael, who waits souls, I put raven and pigeon playing chess in good and bad souls. They are those who are trying to select and to understand what is going on in mankind. On the right side is Saint Jerome with his library, with, again, modern landscape beside the window, through the window. By the way, it's very curious. Sorry to come to details, but I think it's quite interesting if artist explains how it appears. While painting this, I was reading fairy tales to my boys, and I decided to put some dwarfs and some withered little creatures into the library of St. Jerome, which is, of course, against biblical text. But I even asked John, are you against dwarfs and against fairy tales? And wise John told me how Christian can be against fairy tales. I received this sentence as a gift. I also thought that even paganic dwarfs cannot do anything wrong with biblical subject. So, and each signed person lives in the world which is given to us, and this world, as we unfortunately know quite well, is filled up with many creatures. Some of them are from fairy tales, and some from very awful fairy tales. So those dwarfs appear there, and St. Jerome lives in the world trying to translate Vulgata. And from here, I pass to the subject of Last Supper, which again is rather unusual here. Like in the midst of altar, we have this situation of hope which is nearly lost, but again found. Here I depict Last Supper without people. The table which is just left. They just stood up. And the Last Supper where one can recognize the place of Jesus by this crown of thorn. And you can find who is sitting where. Judas and Peter, Bartholomew with his jacket, which probably reminds skin, and knife on his chair, etc., etc. One can go from chair to chair and find out the story. But the challenge was to say this Last Supper is always with us. They just left, they may return. They left and we simply do not even need to see them in person. They left for us everything. We just have to find out ourselves what's going on. Here is Modus with burning bush and with tablets. Again, in tablets, I used also some motifs from Egypt, and not only Egypt, since Modus was in Egypt being Jewish, I thought that some prisoners from concentration camps can be also included in this composition, and some soldiers and guards with dogs only bring certain atmosphere of prisoning in Egypt. Here is flood, the very fragile egg in the hand of a god, which also can be received like a wave. This is a big storm, big tempest, and hand which is a wave, and at the same time hand of God, handles this nearly broken piece of what is it? Piece of what? Is it earth? Is it planet? Is it egg? I simply do not know. It reminds me egg, very fragile, broken egg. But of course it is an ark with Noah there, who is sitting there in his sailor's robe. And with all creatures coming out of this egg or out of this earth. And also with some mystical and, I don't know, maybe even cruel personages from myth, from legends, those who were not taken by Noah to his ark, but they are like dwarfs in the library of Jerome. They also live in this strange water, in this strange ocean where our ark is floating. And the last picture here is Jonas in the whale. In which I took courage to paint a sort of self-portrait, sitting on the island on Ile de Ré alone, so like inside the whale, and who he is, I don't know if he's a scholar or artist or just believer or saint or man in hesitation or man who bears his fate, trying to overcome his fate. But what is important that whale itself, it's also bubble tower. He is a state. This is a strange construction of state in which this man disappears. He is swallowed by state, and he lives within this state being swallowed. All signs there, I can go to each sign because all of them have certain, for me are important, have certain connection to each other. It's a sign of eternity or a sign of history or this Jewish symbol of spheres of soul, etc., etc., etc. The predella to Jonas in whale shows several ways of disappearing and hiding ourselves, because we are living in shells, too often. We create shells for us. Sometimes it's a shell of family, sometimes it's a shell of duty, sometimes it's a shell of obligation, or of our fears, or of our views which belong not to us, but to party or to country. There are many ways to be in shell and to hide yourself from faith. So I showed different variations, variety of such shells and escaping, and how to live being in a shell, how to overcome this isolation. So if to go again through all of this 7 or 14, if to count Pradella's images, all this is about lost and found faith. I always wish to try, if I write or if I paint, I always start with a kind of negative message, provoking message. Since I'm sure it's important not only to give hope, but to give power to overcome situation when hope is lost. And I wish to put spectator or reader, if I'm talking about books, in position when he received bad news first. And later on, with his own power, and probably with a little help of author, he comes to the point that faith is not something that is possible to destroy, that even being on the very low level, on the depth of his existence, he may and should rise up and go. But to give this strength, you firstly have to show where you are now and how it is in reality, because reality sometimes and too often is not surprisingly good. So in all, it was kind of challenge to give to holy place, to sacred place, to temple, to give such an image which not only say all is wonderful, trust and God is with you, but to say sometimes all is not good and you have to find your way to God. And it is you who is responsible for faith, and you will not receive anything easy. Redemption is something that helps even in the very, very, very last moment when hope is lost. So those forces of redemption which leads to resurrection, those forces I tried to depict. That was the main task, main duty, purpose of this work. It took a while. Not always I was content. Always I was not content. And we return with Jean in discussion. Again, due to this virus crisis, Jean was not able to come for quite a while. I sent him little photos, not very good photos because I'm not a wonderful cameraman, and very quick photos. Jean made his opinion. So it was long story. Finally, Jean appeared after, I think, a year and a half. And we spent 3 days talking. It was very intense time. And then I started to work again. I repaint quite a lot, sometimes due to advices, sometimes due to thoughts which appeared while I was hearing Jean. But this meeting was, again, like the first inspiration. This new meeting again was a kind of new push to work. And then another half year passed. And after that period, I felt it's done. Now, when I look at it today, at first I wish to again to say to Jean and to all of you, thank you so much for letting me introduce you these pictures. Now I see I can add something here, I can add something there. Probably I wish to, but I will not. So this work took 2 years and I think it's enough. Now I'm doing something else, writing a new book, doing new pictures. But this was very important moment. All came together. Friendship, isolation, my personal fears, my wish to express possibility to dig the grave for your own self and to come out from this grave. And altogether, I do believe, at least for me, it is like that. All this is here in these pictures. What is also important, I leave this for the last sentence because it's funny. Pictures are green. Because green we have outside. My first impression was when I came here to this chapel, I saw wonderful green window. And I thought to myself, it will be so stupid to destroy this green window, to put something in front of green window where you have fantastic forest, green, magic, promising, breathing, to put something in front of this. How come it's not simply possible? It's a crime. Then I thought to myself, I have to paint something which may breathe with green, that those leaves and green outside may mix up. I came here when it was still not dark in the daylight. And I'm proud to say, at least this part of my job, I did well. Green mixed up, and they live all together. You do not see that I covered green, and what a pity that I covered green, otherwise we could delightfully look at green forest. No. Green forest is still here. I did not destroy anything in green. I brought variety in green, let me say so. So this was done, and if all rest is wrong, this part is absolutely correct. So this I did. So on this very optimistic note, let me finish my speech. I'm so grateful to Jean. I'm always grateful to my dearest, beloved friend, Guy de Moser, who introduced us, and without whom nothing would happen with me in this city. I see many friendly faces here, and I wish to embrace each of you. And if I do not pronounce many names, it's not because I do not remember, but if I pronounce 10 names, I will forget another 10. So let me say that I especially wish to say thank you to Guy de Moser, who is my dearest friend and whose wisdom is always like lighthouse for me. wisdom and noble attitude, because Guy is a very noble man in all aspects. And to Jean Arrest, who became very close friend, and I'm proud to say it. Jean Arrest is someone whom I would call brother. And due to these two persons, to Jean's will and courage, and somehow to my ability to work each day, I was lucky to fulfill this duty. Thank you.
Yeah, come with me.
Are we going to dance?
There were some people who would like me to do liturgical dancing. I can tell you, there would be people who would say now something very. Yes, yes. So, but thank you so much for introducing this word from a very personal development of faith to us, where you bring together your ability to work with your brushes and your spiritual, religious, and human quest. What I would like to do now is just to take 3 points, a little bit, in dialogue, just because I didn't talk about his father, and he's one person that shows up also very often in all his paintings. But there is his father could be, and he praised also Jerome, of course, but his father is also represented in a very little sign that you can't see from here, but you will have to say some words about this double helix that he painted on this page that is on the table. There is a double helix in it. And if I was quite well informed, this is the expression also of the main thinking, the main thought of your father and his understanding of history. Could you say 2 words about that? Because you have the great translator who brings a certain not only view of history to mankind by translating it, but who brings actually the word of the creator and of the redeemer to other people. And in his table, you have then also a certain philosophy of history. So I would like you to make this honor to your father today.
Thank you very much. So I wasn't sure I had to talk about it, but since you mentioned it, it is my greatest pleasure. Yes, I kept it as a hidden object. So my father indeed was a philosopher, and he was philosopher of history. His main book, actually, it is a book which we, my brother and my eldest son and myself, we gathered it from thousands of pages which he left. He never was published due to the obvious facts of his biography. He was arrested, etc., during some times. For years he was, well, not forbidden, but there were certain restricted points in his career through which one wasn't able to come to become a prominent author. But he was a philosopher, and he wrote endlessly. And he gave education to myself, to my brother, and to my eldest son, who was lucky enough to see his grandfather. And when we completed volume, gigantic volume, he gave the title, he still was alive, he saw the book published, he gave the title Double Spiral, Double Helix of History, Double Helix of History. And while I was painting him, and he, for me, was like some Jerome, it came to my mind that double helix, which normally Mercury, der Maximus, Hermestris Megistus, holds in his hand, and double helix of history reminds each other. So I decided simply sign as a tribute to my father's book. I did not know, I could not imagine, I could not predict that Jean would notice the first time. But sometimes Jean notices things which others do not. Okay, so that is it. And indeed, it's a photo of my father, and he's one who, for me, played a role of Jerome introducing me to the test.
It was actually also the painting of the library, which is shown here, and that you can find actually in Maxim's studio on the Ile de Ré. That was the first painting that I discovered on Bay. And you remember perhaps that I couldn't get away from it. And it was in two versions there, one with the person in the library and one where the person left. So I was wondering how I could perhaps find a place in that library, which is always an expression of what is the multitude of expressions that we have of the world, of the divine, or of the human. I use very often the word of constellation. And the library is like an expression of the constellations that we have about our ideas, humanity or the divine. And when you take one piece in the one library, you take, of course, also the other pieces in different libraries. They are connected invisibly. And when I'm here in this, with this art of Maxim, it is, of course, also that you take one element, but the element will introduce you to a way that you move around, and that brings you to another point from where you can collect another piece and then move in a new way around through the stories, through the experiences, through the imaginaries that he brings together. And you can then, of course, also pick the stories from your life. And then you start reconnecting, rewriting, retelling the stories. And I think this is also why I wanted to speak about your father and about the period of Stalinism and everything when he came out of that period. And I have colleagues here who are coming from the countries that were also in the Soviet system, and I think they will relate in a very special way to it and to try to do how can we tell the story then without becoming those who make stories too easy. This is something that I also loved. You don't come with the easy solutions, so you know. And then at one moment, God saved us, and oh, happy day. So we won't sing. No, it's exactly when you are in the midst of the flood, when you are watching into this empty tomb, and it's not as the normal tomb that you have the light coming already out of it, and so happy day once again. So you have a tomb, and you have lost the one who you loved for the second time. It's deeper and deeper. And this is for me also the connection with history that brings up in the Felix and the library together. So we're writing again, do that. And the other thing is then, can we move a little bit there? So he wasn't prepared to this, just that you know, he's just passing his test now for the doctorate. No. Last Supper. Yes. This was the only picture he didn't show to me. I got, I don't know, 20 versions of Jonas. 20 versions, we didn't talk about this. When Jonas moved and became a ship of warfare. Yeah, do you remember?
Yeah, of course I do.
Yes, of
course.
And then we do this, and we were discussing and struggling, and of course. And I saw the flood, and I knew, of course, the Three Marias, John, Jerome, and then we got also Moses. There was one picture didn't show up. I do something about Last Supper or something. No emails to friends. Sometimes Maxim sends emails out to friends. Sometimes was jealous because he was already telling them what they could discover here. And then I come on the Ile de Ré.
And you understand, of course, why I didn't tell.
Yeah, you will have to say a little bit because he showed me everything. And then Maxim becomes very nervous. And somewhat nervous like your boys, I would say. And he tells me, now, Jean, I have to show you something. And you know, you must imagine as with these pictures, they are 2 meters 40 high. And he's a strong man, so he's moving around these pictures. He said, now, Jean, don't look. And I put something there. So I don't look. Maxim moves something around, and I find this picture of the Last Supper. And I see someone, what's happening now, completely, what will he say? I didn't say anything because I was so moved, deeply moved, but you expected me, and the first thing, you don't like it.
Of course I did expect it.
That I wouldn't like.
Of course.
And this was
because it's absolutely unusual Last Supper. And I did not show it to Jean for a very simple reason. I was convinced 100% that Jean tells me, okay, I'm free to do whatever I wish. That was our main and, well, absolutely undiscussable position in our relations. I am doing what I want to. But of course, Jean is master of this institution. He is director. He is well, I never had a boss, but Jean is boss here. And if he says, sorry, Maxim, I love you, all is fine, but not this, what should I do? I would be in position to say, okay, Captain, I keep the order. So I would refuse from it, but I did not want to refuse from it. So I wish to continue and to put Jean in front of picture when it is completed and when picture may talk for itself. If I would start with the explanation, Jean, I wish to paint Last Supper, but you know, it will be Last Supper without Jesus. I'm going to not to paint apostles and it will be just like supper, but nobody around. Can you imagine such picture? It's just a table with lost fork and maybe broken glass and maybe half of citron. Do you like the idea? I'm quite sure Jean would say, hey, may I think another half hour? That would have been the very understandable reaction. So I decided I will not discuss this subject with Jean. And I didn't. And by the way, I had Michel Polfer, a director of Luxembourg Museum. Some of you know him. He came to my studio in Ray because we prepare a big exhibition in the museum. It will be next year. And no, it's not mine. It's yours. And when,
It wasn't a poem, however.
and when Michel Fulford came and I showed him all the chapel. When Michel came, let me continue anyway. I will speak loudly that we may hear. Michel told me, dear Maxim, all is fantastic, all is great, and I'm sure Jean will be impressed like I am impressed. But you know, honestly, there is one picture I do not exactly advise you to show it. It's a great picture. It's a wonderful picture. By the way, I like this picture very much. But please don't be surprised if Jean neglects it. I said immediately, you are speaking about Last Supper. But you guess. Yes, it is about Last Supper. So I was well prepared. And when Jean came, it was the last picture which I showed to him. I said, Jean, okay, now you probably enjoy Flood, you like Three Marias. Why don't we look at something else? And I showed him this. And Jean, like with episode with dwarves, I told you about dwarves. My boys who were always around me while I was drawing, they told me, Father, why you never draw dwarves? I said, you are right. Certainly St. Jerome was surrounded by dwarves. I will immediately draw dwarves here. And I drew 1, 2, and they said, it's not enough, draw more dwarves. And I did. So dwarfs appeared like sounds of telephone of D, one by one by one by one. And Jean was kind enough to say, yes, Christianity has nothing against dwarfs. So that was already an example of Jean's wisdom and ability to receive another person. But when he looked at this Last Supper and said that he loves it, then my love to Jean was already quite big, grows up immediately like Lebanese cedar.
But the thing is, you didn't want to paint, and this is the point. So, you know, there is my doctor Mutter sitting there, and she will tomorrow. I need to go to confession probably because, but it's the same thing that happened when you started here, because the first idea of having it in the center of this chapel was a tombing of Jesus or a Pietà. We were discussing this.
Which, by the way,
yes. But then you were exactly saying the same thing. We are not, this is what has already been done. What is it that you say, this has been done, this we know it, we see it. And this is exactly what happened with the Last Supper.
Yes.
We know all the Last Suppers that we get from, especially those from Leonardo da Vinci. So what is this inner unsatisfaction? There is something I don't reproduce. What was it then? What's happening? That you can't, that you don't want, that there is the resistance actually just to reproduce what our ancestors have made. Because this is for me the other creative aspect. You don't reproduce what they have made. Why?
did not I?
Huh?
Once again, I did not depict what they, apostles, have done.
Or what Leonardo da Vinci has done.
Well, what I did, I present here tools of torture. And we know what they left on table and how they ended. Someone was burned, someone was poisoned, someone was beheaded, someone was hammered, someone was crucified, and there is even a head of goat who is devil. So this part, which is depicted on predella, shows us the way of each of them. So we may start with certain knowledge how it had happened when Jesus said, "One betrays me now," and they stood up, being anxious, being somehow absolutely excited and stonewalled. They ran away, and each one left something important telling about himself. Jesus left his thorn crown, and Judas left not only his wallet with money, but also a glass of champagne. I thought that Judas probably drank champagne. I don't know why. It came like all of a sudden. I thought, well, one can drink champagne. It will be Judas. Why not? Now he got 30 silver coins. Why not to buy champagne? Quite a nice idea. So we can follow the way. We see the eagle of John. We see cock of Peter. So we may create for ourselves history. We see bread of Simon, etc., etc. So they are here. We see head of Jacob with child in his pilgrimage, and then the end of the story. So the story had been told. We don't need them to be here. It will even simplify the picture if they appear. By the way, speaking about Leonard, sorry to jump from myself to Leonard, it's nothing to compare. I know when speaking about giant, it's somehow not so modest to put him very next in this talk. But speaking about Leonardo, what always impresses me in this picture, it will be absolutely uncommon prediction. You all remember this Last Supper by Leonardo. It stands in your eyes. You remember this very strange composition. Jesus in the center, and he's like ship that separates waves. They all, like waves from the ship, they're coming aside in fear or in excitement or being pushed by words. Not they're coming to him, making pyramid, but they're coming up just a bit out of him. And then look at windows. 3 bright windows behind Jesus, which certainly means Trinity. This is obvious. Bright windows through which light is coming. This is quite clear. But look at walls. 7 or 8 dark windows. Then let me put a question. Why such a wizard like Leonardo, who counted each move, and of course he was precise in each detail, and he could paint windows and light and air better than anybody on the earth. Why? He painted 7 dark windows, 3 light windows, and 7 black dark windows. Does it mean that faith that turned to religion has no future? Does it mean the road without end? Does it mean that faith translated or transmitted to confession makes us dark and not light? I leave it open. I simply wish to put this question mark towards the picture, to say that not everything is so clear in this fantastic piece. And fate of apostles and future of apostles looking at these dark windows, keeping in mind that there is 3 light Trinity windows. These dark windows do not promise anything good. So this is about Last Supper. So here again, sorry that it's after Leonardo. Whom should we analyze between myself and Leonardo? We may talk about some very, very unimportant artists. But then coming back to this piece. Yes, I tried to to paint fate without person who is standing beside. Okay, on. That's it.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we could go on like this for those who are here tomorrow from the SCT, welcome to our conference. Tomorrow morning we start at 8:30 with the morning prayer here in the chapel. After that, the conference starts. For those who cannot join tomorrow and would like to follow the conference, you can do it online also. You can connect still. Also at the right to Dr. Achari. You find his email address on our website, www.lsrs.lu. But I wanted also to say that this is something we didn't explore tonight, is that we are in a chapel, we are not in the museum, and that this is a liturgical space where some liturgical performance takes place, and this brings another life. But this will be for another evening. Tonight, I want you to express our gratitude, our admiration, and our friendship to Maxim Kantor. Thank you for being with us, Maxim.